Tasha Yar's funeral. I remember watching this episode as a kid. It originally aired about a week and a half before my 8th birthday. It made me so sad. Not quite as sad as the scene in Superman where Lois Lane gets buried alive in the earthquake, but still, it kind of messed me up. I liked Tasha. Though I guess I didn't like her that much. Looks like I'm a little late to the service here. Truth be told, I was early. I was here way before anyone else. Since I had some time to kill, I decided to take a walk and explore the rest of this program. There's a lot more to it than just this peaceful little hilltop. For example, did you know this is the holographic version of the old default Windows desktop background? It's true. Check it out. Well, that's neither here nor there. We've gathered together today to talk about Tasha, someone whose death shook things up on the Enterprise D in ways that were still reverberating years later. Her death is so significant to the development of this series that I can't help but wonder, what if Tasha Yar wasn't actually killed off? But before we get to that, let's review how we got here. Lieutenant Tasha Yar is the chief of security aboard the Enterprise D for most of the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation. She's strong and brave, a woman of action who doesn't take shit from anyone. And she has the darkest backstory ever! Tasha grew up in one of the grimmest places imaginable, the impoverished ruin of a failed society where rape gangs prowled the streets, forcing themselves on anyone they chose with no consequences for them and no help for those they assaulted. No, not Alabama! It was Turkana 4, the site of an Earth colony that degenerated into lawlessness and violence after the government collapsed. So what the hell, Roddenberry? Rape gangs? Was that your idea? This show premiered in 1987. People couldn't even talk about getting their periods on TV yet. But you could have Tasha tossing out repeated references to how she spent her childhood avoiding marauding bands of sexual predators just to spice up her character history? It's not so much that Tasha's backstory is the darkest. I mean, it's plenty dark, but there are characters in the franchise with histories that are arguably darker. 7 of 9 spent most of her life as a Borg drone. Saru grew up on a planet where everyone was ritually sacrificed when they reached a certain age. Kira survived Star Trek's equivalent of the Holocaust. Garrick was complicit in Star Trek's equivalent of the Holocaust. Mirror Giorgio was the ruler of the Terran Empire and is probably responsible for a few Holocausts herself. That's all pretty dark. No, I think the reason I'm bothered by Tasha's rape gang's backstory is that it's so out of place relative to the rest of the series. There's nothing wrong with writing a character with that traumatic of a backstory, provided you're prepared to treat the subject of sexual assault with the sensitivity and gravity it demands. If the writers of Star Trek The Next Generation had any intention of ever doing that with Tasha, they definitely didn't get around to it during the first season. Given the prevailing norms of broadcast television at the time, it's unlikely they could have done the subject justice, even if they wanted to. And as they teach you in wrestling school, if you can't do it, don't do it. I've never been to wrestling school. I've just heard that they teach you that. I need to sit down. Exit. Anyway, the first season of TNG has kind of a lousy reputation. There's a very good reason for that, namely that during its first season, TNG was kind of a lousy show. Not quite as bad as its reputation suggests, in my humble opinion, but still pretty bad. Yeah. One of the things that made the show so bad in that first season was how unfocused it was. The mission of the Enterprise D and its crew was awfully vague. Sometimes they were following orders from Starfleet Command, other times they seemed to just be wandering around the galaxy going wherever the hell they wanted. Maybe Q has a point. What the hell are you people even doing out here? This lack of focus affected the characters, as well as the plots of these early episodes. We didn't really learn anything about the various members of the crew other than their jobs and one dominant character trait, Captain Hardass. First Officer, big guy who leads away teams. Android, who talks too much and sits at ops. Dr. Mommy. Counselor with feelings. Annoying boy genius who drives the ship sometimes. Blind guy who drives the ship sometimes. Klingon who doesn't work for the Klingons, and short-tempered security lady. That's actually the reason Denise Crosby, the actor who played Tasha, left the show before the end of the first season. Turns out, playing short-tempered security lady every week wasn't very fulfilling for her. So the producers killed off Tasha. My sweet, beautiful Tasha. You deserved so much better than to be swatted aside by a grumpy, talking oil slick. But that's what happens in Tasha's final episode, Skin of Evil. After Tasha dies, Picard beams down, and he's like, "Not cool, grumpy talking oil slick, not cool at all. You're such a jerk that as soon as I've distracted you enough so that we can beam Counselor Troi out of that shuttlecraft you've got her trapped in, we're gonna leave you here all by yourself so you can think about what you did." And grumpy talking oil slick is like, "No, I just want someone to talk to me." Skin of Evil isn't usually mentioned as one of the best episodes of TNG, which is fair, I guess. Despite being one of the better Season 1 episodes, it's not that great. But I think it's certainly one of the most important episodes, because it's the episode where Tasha dies, and because Tasha's death kinda saves the series. The shocking death of Tasha Yar gave the producers, writers, and actors of TNG something solid to hold on to. It brought the series into focus. To make Tasha's death mean something to viewers, the writers showed us how much she meant to her comrades on the Enterprise. Tasha and Worf have a scene at the start of the episode where they talk about an upcoming martial arts competition. Tasha asks Worf to help her practice, and Worf says he's betting on her to win the thing, and they have this nice moment between them. When Picard goes down to the planet to confront Armus and distract him long enough for the crew to rescue Troi from the crashed shuttle, we get a glimpse of the character Picard is destined to become. Philosophical, moral, courageous. He says to Armus, "I'll tell you what true evil is. True evil is to submit to you." That is classic Picard. Later, at Tasha's funeral, we get a rare but much-needed look at the softer side of Picard as well. He shows us more humanity in his choked utterance of "Au revoir, Natasha," than we've seen from him in the rest of the series up to this point. Tasha's farewell message to Picard also helps to give us a better idea who Picard is, or at least who he's supposed to be. She says that he has the heart of an explorer and the soul of a poet. Yep, that sounds like our guy. More importantly, she tells Picard that if there was one person in the universe she could choose to be like, one person she would want to make proud of her, that person was Picard. Isn't that how most of us would feel about Picard, if we were in Tasha's place? Beginning with Skin of Evil, the producers of TNG seemed to realize that Picard needed to be more than the stern, learned, by-the-book boss. He needed passion and depth and a heart. He needed to be someone we looked up to, sure, but also someone we loved. In fact, looking back, it's tempting to read Tasha's farewell messages to all of her crewmates as roadmaps to the characters they would become in the subsequent seasons of the show. It's also worth noting that Skin of Evil is maybe the first time we get a sense that these characters are more than co-workers. They're friends. They genuinely care about each other. But Tasha's death and her resulting absence going forward helped TNG in another way. Few characters are more neglected in TNG's first season than Worf and Geordi. Like every other character on the show at that point, they feel flat and hazy, but they also suffer from having poorly defined roles on the Enterprise. There's not much to Riker in the first season either, but at least we know what his job is. What's Worf's job in the first season? We see him doing a bunch of things, but there doesn't seem to be anything that is his thing. After Tasha dies, Picard promotes Worf to Chief of Security, which is the perfect role for him. Beginning in Season 2, Geordi becomes the Chief Engineer, which helps to give a more definitive shape to his character as well. TNG didn't instantly become a great show after Tasha's death, but her death did kick off the process that turned it into a great show eventually. Storytelling grew more confident, characters were more sharply defined, and the series started to find its voice and establish a unique identity for itself. So what if Tasha didn't die? What if Denise Crosby stuck around after the first season? How would the show be different? We can't know for sure, of course, but the way I see it, there are two ways it could have gone. The first possibility is that the show continues to improve into the second season and beyond. Without the death of Tasha shaking things up and pushing the producers to pull things together, it takes a little longer, but they figure it out eventually. It's not like a main character has to leave a series in order for it to get good. Sure, it worked for Angel and NYPD Blue once, but Deep Space Nine was a solid show from the beginning, and it didn't lose anyone in its first season. And in its fourth season, Voyager replaced Kess with 7 of 9 and didn't get any better. So it's not like it's a rule or anything. So let's say Tasha sticks around. And as the show gets better, so does the handling of her character. Maybe we see another side of her besides short-tempered security lady. Maybe she joins Commander Riker's poker game sometimes. Maybe when Yesterday's Enterprise comes around, she still meets and falls in love with Shooter McGavin of the Enterprise C, but instead of transferring to the doomed ship, she has to let him return to his own time and certain death in order to put history right. And maybe when the Enterprise visits her home planet of Turkana 4 in the 4th season episode Legacy, Tasha is there to be reunited and ultimately betrayed by her younger sister Ishara, rather than Data filling that role. The producers would still have to iron out a wrinkle or two. They'd have to find something to do with Worf if Tasha remained Chief of Security. But that's not such a hard problem to solve. Maybe Worf still transfers to Security and becomes like Tasha's senior deputy. And they work out a division of labor like that of Picard and Riker, where Tasha remains on the Enterprise at the tactical station most of the time, while Worf goes on the away missions. See how easy pretending to write for a TV show is? Especially when you've had 30 years to think about it? What if it went the other way, though? What if Tasha stayed on the show, but things didn't get better? What if the changes to TNG's characters and storytelling that began with Tasha's death never happened without it? What if the characters, their mission, and their relationships to each other never resolve into focus? And what if, for some reason, the show still runs for 7 seasons? What would 7 years of Season 1 TNG look like? That's right, Voyager fans! I found a way to piss in your cornflakes again! In a video about a completely different series. Did you think you were safe? You will never be safe! I won't stop, and there's not a goddamn one of you with ass enough to stop! Probably better for everyone if I give her a chance to cool off. You know how she gets when I attack her. Gratuitously. Over and over. Last time she broke bad on me, I had a sunburn that didn't go away for a month. Whether TNG would have wound up better, worse, or just as good had Tasha Yar not been killed off is something we can speculate about. But something we can be sure about is that TNG did get better after that shaky first season, and many of the issues that negatively affected it early on were, if not resolved, at least addressed by the death of Tasha, the rising and falling action that took place on either side of it, and the rearranging of the show's status quo that it necessitated. Star Trek The Next Generation was not a great show during its first season, but it grew into one over the next few years, and the seed of that greatness was planted right here in the holographic soil atop the virtual grave of Tasha Yar. Kind of morbid, actually. Sorry, Tasha. It hasn't been very long. Captain Janeway is probably still sore at me, so I think I'll just wrap things up from right here. Excuse me. You know, I got this program from an abandonware site. I don't even know whose it was originally. Whoever they are, check it out. They added a shutdown shortcut to the desktop. That's what I call efficiency. Maybe this was Data's. Or it might be Wesley's. He's a nerd. He might be into early 21st century operating systems. And didn't you always kind of suspect he had a little crush on Tasha? Anyway. Oh, if you happen to be watching this on a machine that's running Windows XP, this might shut you down too. Sorry in advance. But it's not my fault you never upgraded. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed this episode of Trek Actually. Nothing personal, Voyager fans. I just thought it would be a funny basis for a bit. Hope there's no hard feelings. And hey, look at it this way. Captain Janeway always gets the better of me. So I think we all get what we want in this scenario. I'm gonna let you know what the subject of next month's Trek Actually video is gonna be in a minute, but first, I wanna give some shout outs to my newest Patreon patrons who are pledging to support this channel at a level of $5 a month or more. And their names are Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Sean McCormick. Thank you, Sean. Purple Dahlia. Thank you, Purple Dahlia. Benjamin Kimberlin. Thank you, Benjamin. Philip Medeiros. Thank you, Philip. Lord Byron Keith. Thank you, Lord Byron. Alan Robichaud, thank you, Alan. Jordan Harpole, thank you, Jordan. Frank Quinn, thank you, Frank. Andrew Moreau, thank you, Andrew. Steve H, thank you, Steve. KZL, thank you, KZL. Leslie Coy, thank you, Leslie. Traskus, thank you, Traskus. James, thank you, James. Rob Sampson, thank you, Rob. Cousin Vinny, thank you, Cousin Vinny. And Madeline Poirier, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that one, but thank you, Madeline. Thank you to all of you for becoming patrons. Thanks to all of you who are patrons for however long you've been and however much you are pledging. I appreciate you so much. I could not do this without you. And you know, one of the ways that I try to show my appreciation for all of you who are patrons is all of my patrons at any level get to take part in the polls that I now use to choose future topics for Trek Actually videos, and the poll that will determine July's video subject is live on my Patreon page right now. So you can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives, and if you are a patron already at any level, you can vote for what July's topic will be. And if you want to have a say in what July's Trek Actually topic will be, you can become a patron and go ahead and vote because it's open to all patrons. I also want to remind everybody that if you enjoy this Star Trek stuff that I do, you will probably also enjoy the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I co-host called The Ensign's Log. It's myself and the brilliant, hilarious Jason Harding. So check out The Ensign's Log, links in the description. I also want to give a special plug this time. I don't usually make a big deal about this, but earlier this month was my birthday. I turned 39, and I don't say that because I want y'all to wish me happy birthday. I mean, it's nice if you do, but I'm not doing it for that. I'm saying it because my buddy Christopher, who co-hosts the Pierre the Chef live streams that I do on this channel once a month, and is also a big Star Trek fan and is one of my oldest and dearest friends, he surprised me this year by getting me a birthday present in the form of a fanfic that he wrote based on my pitch for an alternate final episode of Star Trek Voyager, which I called Pale Blue Dot. For those of you who have seen my not actually Trek Actually video that I did a while back, where I offered two pitches for alternate endings to Star Trek Voyager. One was a rewrite of Endgame that they actually did, and the other one was a completely different story for something called Pale Blue Dot. And Christopher actually took the Pale Blue Dot pitch and expanded on it, added a lot of stuff of his own, and built it out into a really, really awesome fanfic. And it is linked in the description of this video. He posted it on fanfiction.net, so I would encourage all of you, if you like fanfic, if you liked that Pale Blue Dot pitch that I said in that video a little while back, and you thought, man, I would love to see that as an episode, the closest we're ever probably going to get to seeing that as an episode is Christopher's fanfic of it, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. So go check that out if you thought that that pitch of mine, that Pale Blue Dot idea of mine was a good one, because you will really, really like, I think, what Christopher did with it. He wrote a fantastic story. Now, at long last, we come to the subject of next month's Trek Actually video, as chosen by you, my wonderful Patreon patrons who participated in the poll on patreon.com/Steve Shives, as chosen by you from options provided to you by me. The subject of next month's proper Trek Actually video will be why Geordi LaForge actually should have been more than Star Trek TNG's designated chump. I love Geordi. I think a lot of us love Geordi, but a lot of us also feel like Geordi wasn't quite done right by the show. The show mistreated Geordi a little bit here and there, and I'm going to talk about that and explore what they did when they did wrong to Geordi and how maybe they could have changed a few things to make Geordi come out a little bit better and have him come out as a slightly better character or a better treated character by the writers and producers of that show. So should be a fun show to do a Geordi episode. It's always fun to do a Geordi episodes. Well, Geordi episodes actually on TNG weren't always so good. That was part of the problem. But hopefully the Geordi episode of this series will be a good one. Check that out next month. Thank you all so much for all of your support, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.